Hi everyone and welcome to this week's video from Gilbert's LLP. Today I sit down with Tim to talk about the most prestigious prize in Canadian sports, the Stanley Cup, and Tim's history with the cup, which might surprise you. If you enjoyed today's video or any other videos that you've seen on the channel, please do not forget to click the like and subscribe buttons down below so that you don't miss out on any future content. Let's get to it. Hey Tim, good morning. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good, good. So as most Canadians watching at this point are very well aware, Montreal went down in 5 games to Tampa Bay. They did not win the Stanley Cup. I think that's 28 years now since a Canadian team has won, since Montreal won in 1993. I think something like only 5 Canadian teams have made it to the finals in the past 20 years, so a bit of heartbreak there. But Tim, I wanted to ask, growing up and as a young adult, were you a big hockey fan, and are you still a big hockey fan today?
I would say hockey fan didn't do it justice. I was a hockey fanatic. I had three older brothers. They all played hockey. I was the youngest by a number of years. And the thing they did with me, I always wanted to play with them. So because I couldn't skate yet, they stuck me in net in road hockey. So that was the only way to play with the big guys. And that became an abiding passion. Ended up being a goalie.
A lot of Canadians, or at least over the years, a lot of the people I've spoken to who are fans of the game, it seems like everybody has a Stanley Cup story. You know, everybody can vividly tell you the time that they first actually saw the cup in person or got to touch it and so on. And you actually have a Stanley Cup story that rivals most. Do you want to tell us a bit about your history with the cup?
Well, like many Canadians, we all wanted to raise the cup when we were kids. We had dreams of that. And over time, reality starts to set in, and you realize you may not be the elite athlete that you thought you were when you were 9 or 10 years old. Although it's always fun playing hockey. And there was one year in 2005 when the Stanley Cup was in hiatus, in the sense that the NHL had a labor disruption, and there were no games being played. And as the lockout strike wore on and ground down, there was all this speculation about what would happen. Would they actually play that year for the Stanley Cup, or would the Stanley Cup go unawarded? And that's where the legal side and my own involvement came in a battle with the National Hockey League over the who would play and who owned the Stanley Cup.
So yeah, walk us through that. Who owns the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, that in the course of the back and forth between whether it be pundits and opinion columnists, there were a lot of questions about trying to play. There were a lot of people in different clubs wanted to play for the Stanley Cup. Would they give it to the semi-pros? Would they let women play for the club, women's hockey? And there were a lot of different camps talking about that. And in response, at one point, what kind of prompted the legal battle was the NHL put out a statement to the effect that the NHL owns the Stanley Cup, full stop. And so nobody else is playing for the cup.
Mm.
And a lot of enterprising people thought about, was that really true? One group called the Wednesday Nighters, they literally a bunch of beer league hockey players who play every Wednesday night. They came to me and said, is that right? This magical thing that we all pine for and revere as the epitome of hockey, is it actually owned by the NHL, or can someone else play for it? So that began the digging into what was the history behind the Stanley Cup, and the work that we did to unearth that. And what we found, we went right back to the Hockey Hall of Fame. There's actually records there. And we marched over from our office and signed in like any other member of the public can, and wanted to research about ownership of the Stanley Cup. How was it actually found? Who bought it? And it was quite fascinating, because it turned out it wasn't an NHL thing at all. And there's a lot of different history books written about it, but it was actually acquired by Lord Stanley. Yes, but in his capacity as Governor General for Canada. And that put a whole different spin on the creation of the Stanley Cup. And Lord Stanley had decided that it would be a good thing, seeing the rise in popularity of the game of hockey in this country, to have an annual competition to determine the best team in the Dominion, as he called it, and the Dominion being Canada at the time. So he dispatched his aide off to England to acquire a silver cup known as the Stanley Cup, which he brought back, and there's an actual receipt for the purchase of the cup. So with that information, charged with those facts, we challenged the NHL. We brought an application in court for a declaration that the Stanley Cup was not owned by the NHL, but was a trust for the benefit of all of hockey. And that was a great, it was like throwing down the gauntlet to the NHL. That was the beginning of it.
So yeah, what was the outcome of that? After throwing down the gauntlet, what were the next steps?
Well, we got affidavits from hockey historians, and they got affidavits from hockey historians. So these are legal documents setting out the evidence of the ownership of the Stanley Cup. And the debate raged. I remember I came into my office the day that we'd issued the application, and there were like, I don't know, 8-10 cameras there. We actually had to schedule a press conference in our boardroom to field questions on this important issue. Nothing I had done in practice before compared to the challenge over Canada's attachment to the cup and everyone's own view of what the cup meant to them. So along the way, we worked in the end with the NHL. There was so much rampant speculation. We ultimately agreed to not talk, with the media, of course, about this. It was in front of the courts, and ended up coming up with a settlement with the NHL. And the terms of that settlement, part are confidential, part are public. And the public part of that is that in a year in which the NHL does not play, that it's open to the trustees of the Stanley Cup to award the cup to a non-NHL team. So what in fact that cemented was that the NHL does not own the cup, but it's a trust for the benefit of hockey generally, and that the trustees can award the cup to a non-NHL team in a year in which the NHL does not play. So every year in which there is a possible lockdown, labor disruption, what have you, out come the pundits and out come the various people who stake their claim to what they want to play for, and that they too want to play for the Stanley Cup. So it is open, even if you don't make the NHL, as most of us won't and don't. That you could end up with your name ascribed to the cup.
Now, when working on a case that's so high profile and sort of has an entire nation's pride resting on your shoulders, do you find those kinds of situations more invigorating, or are they more taxing, or even is it a bit of both?
I think I underestimated the passion and interest this brought. We had inquiries from all over, including former judges who wanted to help. So there's a legal side to this, which was quite fascinating, about something like an emblem, and which is like a form of intellectual property. Who can actually own that? And so that's a fascinating legal question for the legal buffs out there. And then for the fans, it really resonated with them that the cup was something more than just a privileged right of the elite. It was something about what it means to compete at your best and try your best, and to achieve something really, really fantastic. Then, of course, the elite athletes, I don't think we got a lot of bonbons or chocolates or, built a lot of fans among those who work so hard for so long to even break into the NHL, let alone make it to the playoffs and play for the Stanley Cup and win, because it's so hard, so rare. A lot of them felt that we weren't living up to we were denigrating effectively the accomplishment that those great players had made. And look, I'm a lawyer. I'm a hockey fan. I didn't think it was a play for denigration. I thought it was about the pure magic of sport and the resonance it brought to everyone. And Lord Stanley had a great idea at the time. It turns out to be one of the most storied competitions in the world, the Stanley Cup. They don't just say you play for the championship of the NHL, you play for the Stanley Cup to win the Stanley Cup, which is quite magical.
It is. It is. It's crazy to think that lockout is almost 2 decades old now. Is this a case that you still hear about from people today?
Usually it's around the Stanley Cup time or the lockout time, something like that. We've had a number of different people who have, asked us to come talk about, to their group, whatever it may be, about the Stanley Cup. So yeah, it still resonates. Hopefully it won't be a lockout situation. It seems that the unions and the NHL have gotten along. More lately through COVID, it never really came up because nobody was playing for anything. It would seem the one thing we didn't want to do, and I don't think we've done, but we were careful about, is not cheapening the notion of the Stanley Cup. It was a real challenge. It really was grounded in our history and grounded in the law. I think we made a point. And I think the better thing, and this is an interesting thing about working through difficult cases where there might not be a right answer, is sometimes coming to a resolution is the right thing to do. Some people have said to me, geez, you never actually fought and figured out, you didn't get an order of a court, the judge didn't rule on the final question. And for a lot of people who've been through the court system, they realize it's a tough process to go through where you win or lose. And you can imagine what would have happened, what would people think had we brought that and pushed that case forward and gone all the way and we lost. You don't want to talk about losing. I mean, this to us was a win. The settlement was a win. But if the court decided that no, it was not a charitable purpose trust, it was not capable of being a trust, and it was, all the different legal things that go along with that, you would have just either handed it over to the NHL, or if the trust failed, and this was another little interesting aspect of the case, what happened to the cup, it would go back to the descendants of Lord Stanley. So we actually reached out to the Earl of Derby in England, who is the lawful descendant of Lord Stanley. He owns a fairly significant estate in England. I think he was in the horse business as well. And he was consulted on this and said, well, what happens? And he never really tipped his hand, as far as I know, as to what he would do. So again, back to, what would the average person think of having meddled with the Stanley Cup? I don't think it would have gone that well had the application been turned out that an order had been made that it be returned to England to to Earl of Derby. That would have been a decidedly unpopular result. So in the end, I think the settlement made a lot of sense. We made a point that resonated with a lot of people, and we also raised money for charity. The NHL gave $500,000 to promote the game of hockey among kids throughout Canada. So I thought, that was a good thing, and the NHL is always conscious of the future and conscious of the reaching out to as many people who want to play the game as possible, and that was the way they were able to do that. So a good result all around.
Tim, what were some of the lessons you personally, or even Gilbert's as a firm, learned from this undertaking?
The first was to, first of all, check your own perspective at the door and take on a case with an open mind. I did not know what we were going to encounter when we entered into the question of, who owns the Stanley Cup and can a beer league team actually seriously challenge the Stanley Cup? And, that caused us, with that open mind and thinking through the problem, we saw that there was a big world out there in terms of the history of the cup to be discovered, and it wasn't quite so clear as the NHL had thought. So I think that serves everybody, every lawyer, well, to keep an open mind. I guess the second thing is to do your homework, that diligence of walking over yourself, and not just saying, oh, you've taken it, at a high level, what's gone on. You have to dig to the root, the source documents, and work with those, and really work with the facts and work with the legal issues. So that's another one that we learned. And I guess the third thing is the importance of hearts and minds, right? It isn't all about the laws. Can be kind of a dreary subject, the dreary science, but it's basically say that about economists. But I think that the law can be quite dreary. This is one that really hit people in the heart, right? It really resonated, playing for the cup and the story and that kind of thing. And that, I think, behind every case and everything we do, there's a story, there's people, and keep that in mind, to always hit people in the heart and in the head.
Do you think there's something there that companies, I guess both big and small, can learn from and apply in regards to their own IP work?
Well, I mean, we classically say to people, protect your interests up front. Get it documented. I know from a startup perspective, people, that's the last thing I want to think of. They were too busy working and getting their dream put together to think about putting the structure in place behind it, but it will save a lot and save people staring and poring over the work later saying, what is it you've got? Do you really have protection? Those kind of things. Big companies, they tend to have those things. It's like banks. They typically, through many, many years, have figured out ways to, yes, that's right, we've got to get the paper done. But again, back to that story about telling a story, telling a narrative, behind every case. It doesn't matter what you say, the story really is the most important thing, and sometimes that's lost. So I'd say that that's what you learn.
Tim, before I let you go today, I think I need to ask, can I get your prediction as to the Stanley Cup final for next year? Who do you think we're going to see?
Oh, it's got to be the Leafs, of course. I've been saying that since 1967. But more seriously, it was kind of like the Tampa Bay Lightning, that they went up a couple times and got knocked out in the first round. Then they went on a deep run. So it's got to be their time for a deep run. And then you look at their roster and how they have matured a lot. I think they matured a lot through the last playoff round, and they'll be ready for next year.
Excellent. Well, I hope you're correct in that prediction. It would be nice to see the Leafs win at some point during my lifetime. Tim, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's always a pleasure.
Okay, great. Nice to talk again.